Hello everyone, I'm Brawl Mithra. Welcome to a very special episode. I've never done anything like this, so I'm actually get to do like my first reaction-like video because of FiveofClubs. So what this is going to be is, well, first and foremost, I thank you so much, FiveofClubs, for trying out Scourge Lord. I know I said I'd do other videos, but after watching his video on Scourge Lord, I wanted to make sure I made everything as perfect as possible and fixed every little minor thing that I could. Because, you know, when I'm testing, like, it gets to the point where I just read the card. I don't read the cards anymore. I just know what each one does when I see the title, and then I mechanically would just do it, all mechanics, and you know, it would get difficult because you'd have to remember, like, well, other people are going to see this. Even though I did test with other players from CCG, multiple people had hands-on testing to it. I got multiple rounds of testing, not just by me, but those players also saw iterations of it. So, like, they probably also got to the point to know what to expect from everything. So this is super great to see fresh eyes on it with very heavy mechanics. I know in my video when I first talked about Scourge Lord, I didn't really go into the mechanics because I knew Five would be making this video. Again, thanks so much for Five. He does a really great job in explaining everything and going over everything. So I knew that video would exist, so I didn't really touch on the component or all the mechanics of it, which is what I'm going to do now. But at the same time, he explains them so super well. So highly recommend everybody go watch FiveofClubs video. But here we go. I'm going to go over it, and I'm just going to talk about some of the things that have been improved. You know, why some things went the way they were, why some things were designed the way they were, why some things mistakenly got by. Because some of the things on hit location cards and things that were left confusing were because they weren't reiterated upon after further iterations of the old mechanic. And then as the mechanics got fine-tuned, some of those cards that interacted with old mechanics still, like, didn't get reworded and assumed those old mechanics would still be there. So there was some that were a little bit tricky. So again, that's why it's so great to have someone outside of, like, the playtest group and everything looking at it. Because, again, those are other designers. Those people know what I'm trying to do with the rules. Saw previous iterations of the rules where it was just, here's how this works before flavor text gets added and all that stuff. So, great. Now, let's go ahead. Let's look at FiveofClubs video. I don't know how this will work. I've never really done, like, a video like this. So, again, FiveofClubs makes great videos. Unbelievably, like, fortuitous that he is part of CCG and wants to do other CCG stuff. He's done, like, I think he's done a thing on Allison. I know he did, like, six episodes on Scalding Season stuff, which is where I based the Vignette characters off of and everything. We're off of that playthrough. So, it's just so great. So, again, what you're seeing here now is going to be his video. And again, I'm not going to cover the whole video because it's very long. Obviously, it's a Kingdom Death Showdown, so it's going to be long. But just the way that he even explains the rules is really great. So let's just go into this now.
Ed, we'll call it a Tactics Talk Light, for those familiar with that format. Today we're taking on the Scourge Lord, a Nemesis who specializes in cultivating a swarm of vermin minions enslaved by his haunting string solos.
Which is all true.
While vaguely similar in structure to the Spediculous encounter, each of the Scourge Lord's bug buddies are actually unique enemies with their own individual attacks and behavior patterns.
Correct.
For instance, the Scourge Lord's bug BFF is King Arthro, whose hardened carapace acts as a shield preventing his master from being wounded while he's in play.
Correct. This is actually, so with King Arthro, this is actually all the minions in the fight are all off of the King Arthur's court, right? It's because he's a bard, which is what the Scourge Lord is based off of. He's like a bardic thing. So, you know, one of the most famous bardic tales would be the Arthur's Court, which is the bard for Arthur's Court is Taliesin, and so that's what I did. I just decided to pick one of the most famous bardic tales, which was one that, you know, and this one in particular with King Arthur being a crab, This is just based off of Final Fantasy XI, which is why it's called Paragon Paladin Excellence, which is a nod to Final Fantasy XI. There's other things in here that are also nods to Final Fantasy XI. There's plenty of other nods in here too. There's like Diablo and such, but lots of other hints towards things. So that's where all this would come from.
We'll also encounter the likes of parrying Percival,
Which
loving Lancelot,
and
other princely pests and illustrious insects from the Round Table of Death.
I forget what
like other minion-type enemies, these Nightcrawlers will activate at the end of the Scourge Lord's turn in initiative order. But some of them will also gain alternate activations via Scourge Lord's AI and hit location effects.
Correct.
For instance, certain cards may list effects that either spawn or activate associated Nightcrawlers.
Correct. So again, the fact that it's good that these concepts were able to be grasped so quickly, because this is like normally the after damage triggers. The way the rules say you trigger them only once, which is true here. However, there are 2 different trigger symbols for after damage, so you have to do each one, which can be. Again, I did read the whole rule book and everything as well, but that does go into explain all this, but. The fact that it's so easy to pick up the rules and everything is just great. So this would be after damage trigger, which is great. There's multiple other ones, there's after hit triggers and stuff. Again, I'm not going to go through like the whole playthrough of everything. It's just it's so good that the rules for this were able to be understood because it does it's. I tried to make something as different to Kingdom Death norms as possible. Which would be this. I know Five also mentioned Spiticules, which is, yes, it's minion-based combat. Again, a lot of this design, because I was doing it, a lot of it designs back to like roguelikes or action RPGs and stuff like that. That's why all the minions have critical hit locations that reward all your resources that you'll get from Scourge Lord come from that, landing the crits on the minions. So what you actually want to do is, the idea is you let the minions spawn, and then you collect the resources from them doing criticals. So with that's where you want, if you're going to farm him, right? Like it's an alternate to the Lope, where the Lope is you farm all your resources while you win, right? This is you have to slow down your fight to farm the resources. It doesn't just happen naturally. Right, like you could farm up all these minions and you'd get a huge bonus, a huge boon of resources. Whereas but you wouldn't kill the Scourge Lord, right? He's a constant threat because the resources, the critical hit locations aren't from him, so you're not doing damage to him. Whereas the Lope, the reason why Lope's a problem is you're winning and you're just gathering up a bunch of resources because you want to kill it. You want to kill the Lope. And then it's just as a benefit of fighting the Lope, you're also just going to get a ton of resources just by doing what you naturally want to do. So this was a take on one. It will be like action RPG where these mobs drop like actual gear and drop actual items. They don't drop gear, but the item they get will convert to a gear. So it's like they're dropping the gear, but you're not also winning the fight. There's a give and take to it. It's a push your luck element, which is something different from Kingdom Death. Normally, it's just as you win, as you damage the monster, that's what critical effects do. So that's why the monsters are all like this, all minions. So let's continue with what he's going into.
Like this Manhunter card, which follows up a standard move and attack action with these 2 special after damage triggers. The first activates Loving Lancelot if he's on the board, as indicated by the check icon,
Correct.
And the second spawns Glamorous Guinevere if she is not on the board, as indicated by the X icon.
Correct.
Each of the colors and abbreviations for these Nightcrawlers is listed on the Lord's Court reference card, as shown here.
Correct.
Topping off the triple threat, we'll have to contend with new Dread effects. Cards with the Dread header have a listed effect which triggers whenever that card is revealed. Both the AI and hit location decks have Dread cards in them, meaning that heavily relying on Cat Eye's Circlet or Rawhide Headband's deck peeking abilities comes with an inherent risk of triggering those Dread effects.
Correct. The Dread effects, again, because of how it's done, one, Dread is bad. It's not good. You don't want to trigger Dread, but at the same time, it does spawn a minion, and if you want that minion's things, you need to play into the Dread effect to get him to spawn. So again, the vignette had the cat eye circlet and stuff and the headband. I made sure to include it. It just wasn't... it's not something that you would always want to do. I also made sure that a lot of the vignette survivors had analyze. If that would be something you'd want to do without using the headband, you could still analyze. There's other ways of looking at like AI cards and stuff, hit location cards that doesn't involve the gear, but Five just decided to go around it. Like again, that's such is with the vignette. He's not incentivized to go down the path of farming from these minions, which, it's just because it's a vignette. So the dread mechanic is, again, another push your luck. There's a lot of push your luck elements, which is what I wanted to include in Scourge Lord. So
it's also possible that certain AI or hit location responses might reveal cards in the top or bottom of those decks as well.
Again, that is a good idea. That was something I did not do, again, because I wanted Dread to be push your luck and it to be a alternate method of fighting the monster, not a requirement that you have to engage with. There's other minions, too, that are not requirements, right? Like, again, Five handled this fight really well. We'll talk about some of the stuff that Five went into, his tactics and everything, because they're spot on. So I'm glad that the fight is easy to learn. It's intuitive as you play. You figure out what it is you should be doing. That's great. That's how the fight should work. So I'm glad that he figured out the optimal path right away. Again, the vignette, he also talks about it, is the vignette was designed to win. I wasn't going to make a vignette where you could lose yet. So the vignette was heavily designed to make it so you'd win, because I figured it would be much more fun to play up running around with someone with a bunch of speed. Now, running around with a bunch of speed is the downfall of Scourge Lord. That's how you beat him. And I designed a super fine-tuned speed freak. So that's just what happens. And then you don't need to engage with Dread at all because he's not trying to farm the stuff from that minion. But in theory, if you were playing an actual campaign and you were to look ahead, because everybody looks ahead, you don't have to play completely blind. It's something that I assume most people do with the first time they fight the monster. But then, the second time and stuff is probably when you're going to want to start evaluating their gear, right? I assume most players, again, you can only go as far, or the understanding of how a player will react can only go as far as the designer's, intuition, right? I can only assume what the course of normal Kingdom Death fandom would do. I mean, I talk a lot in Lanterns Reign Discord, I talk a lot on the Reddit and stuff, so I can kind of gauge how most players play, and I think it's fair to say that most players enjoy going in blind, but then after they fought, so let's say you fight the prologue, a lot of players start off, fight the prologue, fight the White Lion, think it's really fun, then they do the first settlement phase blind, they do their first building of everything, they go and fight the second lion again, then they may or may not, after that, they'll probably start looking at the gear, looking at all the stuff, pulling it all out and say to themselves, what is it that we should be doing with this stuff? I assume that is the typical way of playing, and with that in mind, how the scaling of Scourge Lord goes. The first fight, I assume you'll probably do blind. You won't get very much stuff. You'll probably see only the first two minions, maybe the third minion, not of the 12 of the whole round table. A lot of them are just gated to the higher levels. And those 3 or 4 that I expect you to see have the most basic, straightforward mechanics of their gear. So you would look at it, you'd instantly be able to go to the Vermin Sanctuary, you'd instantly be able to figure it out, what's going on there. And then after you did it the first time blind, you'd start to, what can I do to get to these better things that are here? Because they're listed here in the story. Let's look at what gets this. Next time I go to Scourge Lord, how can I do that? That's what I would expect from by the time you get to level 3, Scourge Lord, where all the monsters can actually spawn all of his 12 minions. Level 2 spawns more minions than level 1. Level 3 can spawn all 12. That's where you'd want to start looking and doing the push your luck towards, hey, that's the rarest guy. I haven't ever seen him before. He finally can now spawn on level 3. I'm going to try to crit him, and I'm going to let him stick around to see if I can get his reward. That's the way I decide. That's the way I would think you'd be playing. Now in a vignette, because you're not actually doing that, again, you're not going to care about all the minions and stuff. Such is the vignette, and such is Scourge Lord. Again, Kingdoms, that's a campaign game, so the more the campaign elements, rewarding the Nemesis for being fought multiple times in the campaign was really the goal. It wasn't designed to be... That's why 5 didn't even do the aftermath and stuff. It's just not intended to be like a rewarded one-shot. That's why the Vignette was designed to win. That's why it was designed to have fun and to really highlight what you could possibly get from what the idea of this expansion was, which was adding high speed, giving you ways to target multiple targets within your same single attack, and then giving fighting arts and stuff to let you cash in hits, stuff like that. So that's what it was. And let's continue on.
Add to the dread drama, but that's just speculation on my part.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I should have
running about the board and spawning from certain cards, one might pause to worry, how will we keep up with the ever-increasing swarm and attack the boss, given that survivors are only allotted one standard attack action per turn?
Correct.
Well, that's where this new attack-modifying survivor status comes in. Each survivor gains this status card at the start of the battle, which reads, quote, while attacking minion-type monsters, roll to hit as normal, then resolve wound attempts one at a time starting with your target. If this target is killed, you may resolve any remaining wound attempts against other targets in range. Using this new ability, you could potentially kill multiple adjacent minions with a multi-hitting attack. As such, higher speed weapons can certainly shine as the bane of bugs, allowing you to splatter a few surrounding swarms with some speedier weapons.
Correct. This Mandible Cesty, we're going to talk about this one. I just want to also be upfront. A lot of this stuff that I'm now going to go over is going to spoil a lot of the stuff, because this, if you actually want to use Scourge Lord and go completely blind, this will be completely spoiled. But anyway, a lot of this stuff from when he released his video, right? This is just you got to remember. It's not that I didn't know he was. I knew he was going to do a video. I tried to keep him as blind as possible. I didn't. When he asked about like how things worked, I didn't answer any questions. I just clarified things to say yes, you're getting these rules right. He wanted to play blind. He did that truly as much as he could. And then as he clarified things, is when I initially started making changes. So the video I recorded was before. It's when I already knew he was going to do it, but it was before he finished, because I wanted to make sure my video was able to go up when his launched. Mine ended up being recorded like 2 or 3 weeks before his finally went up, so mine was already like outdated, or not outdated. I had already forgotten what I had said. But the other thing was, when he was asking for clarity, I was able to clean up some of these cards. This flinch token one is cleaned up when I launched it. So with this Mandible Cesty that rewards 2 flinch tokens, it has gone down to 1 flinch token. So the reason for this was I also have to design this Cesty, right, with in mind that it needs to still be good in a regular game setting, in a regular Kingdom Death game setting. So using a paired weapon that's going to always attack for like 6 speed, because it says well paired. This is something that triggers off well paired. You're always going to be drawing 6 cards. And in a regular non-Scourge Lord fight, you're going to draw those 6 cards against the monster. You're probably only going to resolve, if it was down to 1 flinch token, you're probably only going to resolve maybe 2 or 3. And you could do that without pairing it. So that's the reason why I gave it 2. So you could at least maybe get to 3 or 4 on average. So at least you felt like pairing it was an advantage. I know you're never going to get all 6 in a regular fight. I know that. But I didn't want it to be lower than the actual speed of the weapon, because then why would you bother pairing it? Right? The flinch tokens are great, but if you could always scout your 3 and then just attack with your 3, that's just better. Why even risk drawing 6 cards? So I needed to make sure, at least when you were attacking, you could maybe get to 4 speed and expect maybe to do 4 wounds. That's why it was 2. I worried 2 would be high, but it's a give or take. So I lowered it down to 1 again, because it is what it is. Once you see it from like outside, you're like, oh yeah, 2 is really strong. To lower it down to 1 wouldn't really hurt, but that is why it was at 2. I don't know. I would have to really again, when I was making Scourge Lord, I can't go to every single one of these weapons and then fight every single monster again, right? Like I can't go, okay, now that I'm done designing Scourge Lord, let's play a whole campaign with just doing Mandible Cesti and really test it, right? Like I don't have the time to do that, and I can only calculate what it is that would feel bad, and I need to think to myself, would anybody pair this if they couldn't push the benefits of pairing it past what they could do without using up that second gear slot? So things like that just enter your head. Like, that's just how you have to try to balance it. So Mandible Cesti has been brought down to 1. That, again, like I was saying, that going down to 1 should have been reflected actually in the launch, because it was something that we had talked about, Five and I, after he had recorded his video, while he was editing it. So it was stuff I was able to do before the launch, so you don't have to worry about it. It does make this video feel a little bit weird if anybody did notice that the stuff that was launched would be slightly different than what the video showed. But it is what it is. He actually showed that in his video too. There was a card, I redid it based on what he had said. So
when you take out your target, you simply turn the rest of your successful hits onto another. Notice, however, that this can only be used against minion enemies, meaning
correct.
You can't kill a...
Good job, Five of Clubs. Good job. This was actually something that sometimes even playtesters didn't notice. Sometimes I would even forget too, right? But good job. Picked on it up right away. You can't use this against Scourge Lord, right? It's only other minion types. So that is awesome. Good job, Five. You picked it up.
Bug or two, and then have the rest of our successful hits applied to the Scourge Lord. Some of the buggers have death blow hit responses as well, which can allow you to move mid-attack and possibly chain together a moving combo of bug bashing.
Correct. That's the idea of it. With the death blows on the regular old swarms, it would give you the 1 movement and not end your attack. That it was 100% needed to be a death blow. So that is pretty much the driving candidate of what makes this work, is those vermin swarms. That's like the fuel in this like generator that lets you move around exactly like this, which is great. All picked up, and he handled it great. So good job, Five. You're doing really good.
Which sounds really awesome if we could pull it off. I think that'll do for the basic boss concepts you'll need to know ahead of time. We'll uncover the other traits and triggers during gameplay, of course, but let's chat about our Vignette combatants. We have some coastal congregants to take into battle here, and might I just say, it's amazing to see Miss Darien return from her earworm episode to do battle with her fellow congregants in this dreamlike vignette.
This is,
it looks
again,
like they're geared up for high tide tsunami rush,
seas.
using pre-built gear grids and starting stats for this one-shot battle that showcases the expansion's unique elements in a centralized manner. Joshua looks like he'll be our resident speedster, equipped with a paired set of Mandible Cesti Katars that grant him 6 speed when resolving attacks. Scratch that. 7 speed when you add in his bonus speed and strength from the White Lion armor set.
Correct. That's another thing. This is why he was super fine-tuned. White Lion set gets a lot of like negative press. It's not great. So that's why I push this towards White Lion. The Cesties, I assume people would mostly use them because they're Katars. You'd use it with Lion. So even like all the affinities and stuff are like tailored towards it. You could unlock Sharp just by using the 2 Cesties too together without using White Lion and all that stuff, but overly fine-tuned. And Joshua was he was meant to be a character. I knew that he would be the character where if you were even in a bad situation, he could probably handle this, getting you out of it single-handedly. Such is the way the vignette, as again, I designed it to win. I over fine-tuned it to overly win, apparently. Again, when I made this, I didn't test Scourge Lord with this, right? Because had I tested this, it would have given bad results. Because these characters are super fine-tuned, way ahead probably of their power level that they should be. Not good for testing. But however, I did test Scourge Lord using core only and with the White Lion set. But I was using Beast Katars, not Mandible Cesties. Mandible Cesties are like way better than Beast Katars. So I did give him a test. This is pretty much a close to the testing, only I didn't have some of all these boons and stuff. So again, Scourge Lord was tested core only, so it's probably thing in hindsight, it makes you wonder how they do actually playtest. If they do playtest everything core only, or like maybe with Gambler's Chest and stuff, maybe with Wave 4 Iron Mountain. I'm assuming they'd test Iron Mountain just with Iron Mountain stuff. They probably don't test it with Lantern stuff. Like they're probably not going to worry about balance of Iron Mountain by including White Lion and Antelope and stuff. And I'm assuming that's the same with the Gambler's Chest. They're probably not including White Lion and stuff. Maybe with Gambler's Chest they might, because Gambler's Chest is like a big focal expansion. It's the first one to come out. But with Wave 4 stuff, maybe they'll just test with just Gambler's Chest stuff, or maybe they'll test with just Iron Mountain by itself. Interesting. So with that said, I tested Scourge Lord with just core. I didn't use anything like after that. I didn't even use like 1.6 really. 1.6, actually I did use 1.6 later in testing when I was still designing it, but all of it was done with 1.5 core, and maybe that results in it being a little bit weaker because the core gear builds are a little bit weaker. I don't know. It's a lot of push your luck stuff, and if you're really going for the push your luck stuff, you can lose quite. The problem with Scourge Lord is keeping the minions in check. So without someone with 7 speed, it gets a little bit harder. With someone with 7 speed, kind of a lot easier. Debatably if it's even a problem with someone with 7 speed. But there are methods to like improve on your speed. So not that big of a deal.
These guitars also gain the sharp keyword, adding a D10's worth of strength to all of his wound rolls. And they have a super special ability that rewards you for landing 4 or more hits on the Scourge Lord.
Yes, these are the
As listed on the card, you'll be able to leave 2 flinch.
So I talked about most of this stuff. I'm just going to go now to some of the other points that were raised and some interesting things to comment on from design standpoints. Some of these cards I'd already rewritten because he had asked for clarity on things, and I was like, all right, yeah, you know what, I can change that card up. So the card you see it's actually this, and this is the state it released in with this one for like Wayward Compass and stuff. I have since gone back now that I've actually seen his video and changed some other stuff. So I'm going to talk about those as well. But he talks about the persistent injuries here, which is correct. I'll talk about why I made a rules faux pas. You could say I got the rules completely wrong, but I don't actually know if they're right or wrong. I'll explain it, but here's Five's take on it.
Because it's like it'd be weird if we attacked this compass again and then also spawned the bug again.
So this is
I don't
correct.
know, or I don't know, maybe he has multiple lanterns. Maybe he's like the butcher who has lanterns about it.
This is correct. So the way the card originally, it was a wound result on an impervious thing, which debatably can or cannot happen. That's why I changed it for clarity. There's no examples of it not being able to happen, but the idea was it's impervious because you're missing and you're hitting the lantern that he has on his belt. If you completely whiff, nothing happens. That's so if you fail to wound. If you do wound, you hit the lantern, it shakes, and the bug comes out. If you crit, you knock the lantern off and you keep it. That's what it is. So I just rephrased it. So the new card is just highlights that more without doing all this wound stuff and everything. But that was what the intent was. Now, as for this being a persistent injury, he's going to go in and talk about this as well, and I'll talk about the rules for persistent injuries.
His body. So I don't know, but it says persistent injury keep in play, and it doesn't seem to explain that on the wound or the crit, or maybe it's just a mistake. It's possible that is mistakenly put there because I don't understand it.
It's actually not true. Five actually does understand this really well. It's just confusing because this is the first card, because there's no current examples of this being the case where you could still wound an impervious and you're only talking about the mechanical wound. It's just non-intuitive. I've actually talked to Dark Tastemaker about it as well. It's just considered non-intuitive, and for this 100% reason, as Five's head exploding and everything, it's just totally it's just not intuitive. Mechanically, when I read that, it's fine. Rules-wise, it's fine. It's just terrible to do. But now the persistent injury thing. Persistent injuries only proc off crits. Persistent injuries don't trigger if you wound. They're only a critical. So if you critical, it becomes a persistent injury because you knocked the lantern off his belt. So the lantern is no longer there. So you wouldn't be able to re-trigger this thing. So it stays in play as a persistent injury. That's why that is a persistent injury, because I don't want the card repeating anymore now that he's dropped his lantern.
Oh gosh, persistent injury, keep in play. Maybe if we crit, then it's a persistent injury.
Yes.
That's how normally other crits work. You know, that's probably what it's meaning to do, is the critical injury does the persistent injury, even though a lot of the other...
5, you're good. You're good. C5's roll, he's got all rules. He's golden. You got that 100% correct.
Other ones, if I remember right, like the lion, it'll say persistent injury or keep this in play as persistent injury. So
correct. Now, here's the part I was talking about where I don't know the actual rules, but I've gone back and redone the card. So this says persistent injury, lost ding dong. Your attack destroys white lions, all the stuff, right? That's the example that he gives. That persistent injury with the skull and lost ding dong affects AI cards. So that persistent injury is this is the persistent injury, and it's named this. So then if an AI card comes up and checks for the persistent injury, you know which one it's referencing. That's a reference tag. I don't think it needs to be there. There's no rules that saying in order to have a persistent injury, it must be given a name for reference, because nothing will ever reference the fact that he doesn't have a lantern on his belt anymore. So there's no need to have a name for the AI card to reference, which is why I didn't put it there. I just wanted the card out of the deck, right? So it should have actually said archive this card. It shouldn't even have been in it persistent injury. Again, I went ahead and rechanged it. Actually, for the other ones that now will proceed to be in the deck, I do put this persistent injury and I give them a name, even though they're never referenced by AI cards or other hit location cards. They're there just for similarity, and they're there for everything else. So, correct. 5. I'm glad. This is why it's so valuable to have fresh eyes on things, because these cards were like that a whole bunch, and it gets to the point where, like I said, with testing, even with the playtest, it's like they must have played at least 5 to 8 times as well. We just knew what things were doing, and you don't actually sit there and read the entire card. So, this has all been changed now. So, thank you to 5 for pointing this out.
Not sure. I'll have to ask for some clarity on that.
And he did, and that's why I was able to write the card out before launching. So, again, some of this stuff you won't even know. So, there's one more thing I want to talk about real quick. Let's go ahead and watch.
He's pretty low toughness.
He's attacking Tristan.
17 plus 4 is 21 plus 5 is 26. What was his toughness again? It's 4. If you have the Vermin Cage in your gear grid, gain the Bioluminescent Fly Strange resource. Cancel this hit and remove this minion from the showdown board. Oh, it has a reflex. Uh-oh.
Correct. Now, the way he plays this is the intended way that you will now see on the card. I removed the reflex part of this card. I'll go and I'll show you the stuff that's changed, but I just want to talk about this. He plays this beautifully, even though technically I wrote the rules terribly wrong, and he plays it the correct way, which is great, despite my incompetence of writing them incorrectly. Why is this a reflex? Well, there's 2 reasons for that. One, before we started testing the level 3 heavily, Song of Generations, at this point I'm just assuming you're going to go watch 5's video, because why wouldn't you? 5's is great and amazing. Everyone go watch 5's video. It's awesome. Song of Generations, the main mechanic for Scourge Lord, used to, at one of the stages of Song of Generations, used to increase the life of all the minions. As we fine-tuned the hit locations, as we tweaked the damage, as we got it better and better, and made it more... The adding life to the minions became a huge problem and a huge slog, because as Scourge Lord himself got harder, and then the minions already being hard, them getting life is why some of their hit locations have reflexes. Now, there's still another reason why some of their hit locations have reflexes. That is because you can alter what type... Some cards alter types, right? So this being a reflex is something I want to happen regardless, which is why in the new one I've just removed it saying reflex. It just does it now anyway, whether it's a death blow, whether it's anything. It just happens right away. So, with the reflex still being there on some of them, not all of them. So some that have reflex wound, that was assuming because they were the level 3 or level 2 ones, you'd get to that point where they would have extra life. But now that I made it so Song Generations does not add more life to minions ever, they're always going to be 1 life, except for 2 of them get extra higher life. Just to make it quick and easy that these things are just bugs, you're stomping them. No need for them to have extra life. Some of the wound ones persisted, and that's my fault. So some of the reflex wounds, there's 2 of them have now been changed to reflex death blow, or just death blow, not even a reflex. Some of them still have reflex failure and reflex, or reaction reflex and reaction failure. And that is because there's some gear that can alter what it is, right? So you can change a wound reaction, you could change that to a wound or reaction failure. Or you could change a reflex to a failure, right? So that is why those are still there. That way you can change a failure to a wound, right? So those are still there for mechanical reasons, just in case there's ever like some way in the future where you can tweak what type of reactions you get. There already are some. We've seen that those already do exist. I know we're getting more in Gambler's Chest with Bandana and stuff, but that is why those are still there, even if you're not resolving them. Now, in Five's case, he played it perfectly, and I just totally botched the rule writing. So
the small vermin is intensely bright, and you must blindly attack the pest. Loud buzzing is the only target. You can lock onto.
Hey, listen!
Yes.
Nice. I love the reference. All survivors adjacent to this minion take 1 damage to a random hit location from your erratic attacks. Is anyone adjacent to it? Oh, Joseph is. So Joseph takes 1 damage there. So I guess we'll see.
He
over
resolved
to his
this
arms.
without even
he
rolling
is the most equipped to be able to deal with that. But
should have just canceled
annoying
this.
Little bug. Get out of here, you pest.
Thanks for being generous and playing it correctly. You wouldn't have had to actually resolve that had you rolled the wound. So now I'm going to jump into Tabletop Simulator real quick. I'll show you some of the minor tweaks, minor changes I've now talked about. Tabletop Simulator, you can see this is the Scourge Lord expansion with the box and everything. I just want to go through, pull out some things here that are slightly different as to what I changed. There was also, I know on the video, there was a comment about stuff being typos. Some people left typos. I got those as well from anybody who was commenting. So thank you to that, anybody who commented. But what we just want, I know there's a menace card and stuff. Those are now fixed. Again, a lot of this stuff went up live, where went fixed even though it was live. So I just want to pull out the hit location cards, Scourge Lord cards. Pull these out. Hit location cards. Pull out the deck here. Let's see. So here is one with the persistent injury, what I was talking about. This is the one where you can see now it says persistent injury, bold over, and then it says persistent injury, keep in play. So this has just been added for consistency's sake. I did add it now, so thank you, FiveofClubs. They are now in there. Let's see if we can get to that other card, the Lantern. There's another persistent injury. This is another one. This one just says dropped instruments. This is another one that there's a possibility of getting persistent injury that would have normally just removed it from the deck. But now for sake of everything being the same, it will now say persistent injury at the bottom. There it is. Wayward Compass. Here's the new card. Again, this is none of that wound reaction or nothing. So this just says blow grazes the makeshift lantern, which I was already describing. Roll 1d10 and add your accuracy. If the result is less than monster level +4, it falls and the vermin trap within escapes, and then you spawn. Otherwise, you add vermin cage rare gear, and then you archive the card. Right? No more of the crit wound, no more of that stuff. So that is the new reaction card. Let's put those there. Let's pull out, I think there was more minion cards. I'll show you some of the minion reactions here. So like Boar's was one, for example. His used to be a wound, now it's a death blow. Let's see. This was changed. This is now just a reflex. This used to be just a wound. It's just a reflex now. It's a reflex. This is changed to death blow. This used to be a wound. Again, changed to death blow here. Used to be a wound reaction. Most of these are reflex. This one's still a wound. Because this one can gain extra life. This minion. Here's the biolumin. This is the fly. This is the one I was looking for. So you can see now, just the reflex is just removed, and everything's going to happen now regardless, because they no longer have life. So that's everything. There's minor changes. I think with these minion cards, because I hadn't seen his video and I wanted to launch Scourge Lord with his video and everything. So there's like a 2 to 3 day period in there before I could make a lot of these changes. So if you did download Scourge Lord, if you did everything right away, thank you. I hope you're having fun. That's the reason why I made it. That's another reason why I got so deep into doing this with all 5 clubs and everything. So hopefully it all works out. But if you did do it right away within the first 2 days, after me sitting down and watching Five's video and listening to all his feedback and listening to everything and making sure I want to get extra clarity on everything, that is these are like the 5 or 6 changes that I just had to make because I just hadn't noticed them during playtesting. So with that said, everything's updated on the drive now, and if you didn't do it right away, I'm talking like literally within 2 days of my last video being launched, which was like a week ago now, a week and a half ago, you should be fine. I think it's like 10, 11 days. So with that said, thank you so much to FiveofClubs for doing this. I had so much fun watching the video. Hopefully, you did a great job. Your strategy on everything that you said, you nailed it. The strategy, I would cover all your strategy, however, but like I was saying with the Joshua thing, that vignette was designed to win, Mr. FiveofClubs. So, with that said, I would like to formally challenge you to try the new vignette. That's right. I created a brand new vignette. Let me get this open. We're going to go save the objects. We've got Scourge Lord Vignette 2. Right? This is a special vignette that was added where we do not. It's a challenge for you, FiveofClubs. I will give you the file to this. It is redone. It is against a level 3 Scourge Lord. Right? The vignettes, here they are. Different. No. You've got different stuff here. You've got some Phoenix. Right? What else we got here? Oh, leather. I'll leave these for you to pull out and look for yourself. We've got brand new survivors for you. We got brand new survivors. I leave this up to you. If you would like to do this, you will be rewarded with, a special reward bag for you, where you can open this up and you can find out what's in there. There's one more thing in here, right here. It's a strained milestone. So, the survivors of the Coastal Vignette defeat the Scourge Lord in the vignette. If this level 3 Scourge Lord vignette is defeated, I will permanently go back and create 5 cards. It's 6 cards, but I will add this 4 cards of your choosing. They haven't been designed yet. I don't know what they are. There's one in here as an example that I'm not going to show. You can show it in your video. It's here. You can take a look at what it is you'll win. One of them is in there. But I will add 4 cards of your design, of your choosing, however you want to gather that. You can ask your community, however you think you want to do those cards. Whether they're probably going to be like an ability or a fighting art, something like that. Whatever it is that you want to do, I will make them and I will include them in Scourge Lord. And then there'll be a pattern with a gear. That's why I said 5. There'll be 5 things, but because a pattern card is just a pattern card, it's actually 6 cards. But the gear is what you'll get. There's an example in that bag. If you could beat it, you can open it up and look at the example in there. So, with that said, if you want to do this, I'll send you the file. It's totally understandable if you don't want to. I totally understand. It's a level 3 Scourge Lord. Why would you want to do that, right? But if you do beat it, I will do that for you. Your community, whatever it is you want to do, ask your community, ask your YouTube, whatever it is. I'll make the cards, I'll include them, and then I'll post it on the Patreon, and you shall have yourself whatever one of these 8. There's now 8 Vignette survivors. Whichever one. There's 4 new ones, 4 from the previous ones. Pick 4 of them, and they'll be immortalized in Scourge Lord forever. So, it's up to you. 5 clubs. I'll send you the file. We'll see what happens. But, anyway, thank you so much for watching, everyone. I am going to be getting back to doing normal stuff. I just got so entranced with doing this and making everything. Again, if anybody else ever wants to play Scourge Lord, let me know. I'll react to your video if you can post it on YouTube or whatever, too, if you want to play in Tabletop Simulator. I would love to do it. Maybe, if you even do it, maybe I'll do the same thing for you. But, thank you so much for watching. And more videos are now coming, now that I've now finished this, fine-tuned everything, and have played Diablo 4. No longer do I need to sit around and just play Diablo 4 and waste my free time. So, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next Lantern Year.